They said no mortal, no god could ever truly comprehend the warp, that endless storm where faith becomes flesh and emotion burns brighter than suns. Yet somewhere across the bleeding stars, beneath the shadow of dying worlds, something new stirred within that tempest, a stranger, a curse given form. His name once echoed through another universe, a place of fallen titans and slain gods. Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta. Now he stood at the edge of eternity, his axe heavy with memory, his heart carved hollow by loss. The warp did not welcome him. It tried to consume him, twisting planets into madness, warping prayers into screams. But he endured. Every breath was defiance, every heartbeat a declaration of war against oblivion itself. Where others begged their gods for salvation, he demanded it, and where demons howled, he roared louder. Yet even the god of war could not imagine the scale of the Imperium's torment, a galaxy where faith was both weapon and wound, and humanity bowed to a corpse on a throne. He would not come as conqueror or savior, but as witness to madness, to meaning, to the price of divinity. Before we dive deeper into his descent through the warp, I need to be honest. My heart sank when I saw that almost 90% of you watch these stories but never subscribe. If you want more dark tales like this, where myth collides with chaos and gods bleed into galaxies, please like, share, and subscribe. That one small click keeps these stories alive, even in the void. Because this isn't just a battle between gods and demons. It's what happens when wrath itself meets eternity. The first thing he felt was pressure. Not the familiar crush of gravity or the pulse of blood behind his temples, but a cosmic weight that pressed on the very thought of being. The air, if it could be called air, unburned with color. Red without redness, light without form. It hissed against his skin like molten sand, yet left no mark. He rose slowly, muscles tensing out of habit more than need. Beneath him stretched a surface that was not ground, not sky, but something that breathed both. Each step sank into rippling light, each motion stirring echoes of screams too distant to name. Kratos remembered dying once, perhaps more than once. He remembered a boy, a promise, a path of gods who bled and begged. But those memories broke apart the moment his foot touched this place. The warp devoured truth and regurgitated lies until the two were indistinguishable. A sea of souls surrounded him, their agony stretching into an eternity without horizon. For an instant he thought he heard his own voice among them. He drew the blades of chaos, and the fire that burst from them burned wrong. Not the clean, furious orange of his past, but a shifting hue of violet and gold that whispered his sins back at him. The chains that bound them pulsed as though alive, each link throbbing with a heartbeat not his own. He swung once and the air screamed. Reality tore like wet parchment, exposing layers beneath. Faces, cities, angels made of glass and blood, all blinking out as quickly as they appeared. He was not alone. Shapes moved at the edges of perception, not walking but unfolding, their limbs forming from ideas instead of matter. They were the color of madness, demons drawn to the scent of something unfamiliar. One looked like a man flayed into ribbons of light, its laughter a chorus of infant cries. Another crawled upon the ceiling of the sky, mouth gaping wide enough to swallow thunder. Kratos did not flinch. He had slain gods. He had watched entire pantheons crumble into dust. But these were not gods. They were emotion given form, rage, despair, hunger, and they recognized him as kin. The first lunged. He met it head on, his blades cutting through its light body in a storm of molten arcs. Yet when it split apart, it did not die. It multiplied. Fragments of its essence splattered across the void and rose again, each piece screaming with his voice. The warp rewarded violence with reflection. Every act of destruction seeded another monstrosity. Kratos' fury only made them stronger. He roared, not in fear but in defiance. And the sound rolled across the endless plain like thunder made of bone. He began to run. Not away but through. The ground warped beneath him, reforming into the ruins of memories. The halls of Olympus twisted beside shattered temples of Mars. The scent of olive oil and promethium mingled in the burning wind. The warp mocked him, weaving his past into its fabric. He saw Zeus's corpse strung upon a broken Aquila, Athena whispering binary hymns, his son's voice calling from within a vox grill that spat sparks. He knew these visions were lies, but even lies could wound. Every strike, every step became an argument against oblivion. His body was not meant for this realm, yet it endured through sheer refusal. The chains on his arms sang as they cleaved through illusion, their weight grounding him to the single truth he had left: survival. Still, the warp learned him. It began to mirror his rhythm, turning his rage into landscape, his grief into weather. Ash fell from the heavens, gray flakes that smelled of burnt flesh, and the ground beneath became a mirror of his scars. Somewhere within the howling void, a voice began to speak. It was not sound, but memory rendered audible. Words older than stars filled his mind, each syllable dripping with machine logic and holy dread. Unknown signature detected. Probability 0. Soul mass inconsistent with cataloged entities. The tone was fractured, like a recording played through a dying cogitator. Kratos turned toward the sound, and for the first time since awakening, he felt something other than wrath. Curiosity. Through the shimmering haze approached a figure of light and metal, its form shifting between priest and automaton. Tubes of glass ran through its chest, filled with liquid data. Its face was a lattice of code and sorrow. "I am what remains," it said, its voice splitting into a chorus of itself. A fragment of the Mechanicus lost in the storm. "You are impossible." Kratos said nothing. His silence was older than language. The fragment tilted its head, scanning him with eyes like twin suns flickering behind brass lenses. "The warp should have consumed you. Even the Emperor's chosen are not immune." "What are you?" He considered the question, the chains coiling around his wrists with a faint metallic hiss. The ghosts of old gods stirred in the dark, whispering names he had tried to forget. At last he answered, his words slow, carved from stone. "I am the one who kills gods." The demon light around them quivered, as though the realm itself understood the challenge implicit in those words. The warp fed on belief, and belief had just found a new flavor. The machine spirit's gaze dimmed slightly, and for a heartbeat, Kratos thought it smiled. "Then you will find much to kill here." The storm grew louder, the horizon tearing open like a wound. From within poured an ocean of color and flesh, a tide of demonic forms drawn by his defiance. The fragment extended a hand, metallic, trembling. "Come, there are places where thought still holds form. If you remain, this storm will remake you into what it thinks you are." Kratos glanced once more at the chaos he had birthed. He could almost feel it learning his name. He sheathed his blades, their flames dying into whispers, and stepped toward the machine saint's light. Together they vanished into the shifting geometry of the warp, two impossibilities walking where even angels dared not tread. Behind them, the ash continued to fall, covering the battlefield of illusions until all sound faded into silence. Somewhere far ahead, something vast stirred, not in hunger but in interest. The warp had taken notice. The passage through the warp was not a journey but a slow unmaking. Each step peeled another layer of meaning away from reality, reducing sensation to memory and memory to echo. Kratos moved through a corridor of shifting geometry, following the flickering beacon of the machine saint who guided him. Its form shimmered like liquid glass, sometimes man, sometimes spirit, its outline held together only by will and recitation. The creature was older than any world he had known, yet younger than the madness that birthed it. It spoke in broken scripture, each word laced with data streams that hung in the air as threads of burning code. Designation, Magos Lathril, it said, voice stretching between frequencies that made Kratos' skull thrum. Once of the explorator fleets, we charted the edges of the immaterium, where faith becomes geometry and thought breeds monsters. Then the storm came. Our ship became prayer. Kratos said nothing. He had no patience for riddles, yet even in this chaos he understood that survival required guidance. The entity seemed to sense his silence, mistaking it for reverence. "You are a constant anomaly," it murmured. "No warp signature, no soul pattern. The machine spirit within my frame weeps in confusion. You should not exist." The path around them pulsed like a vein. Spectral lightning crackled through distances that refused to stay consistent. Sometimes they walked for seconds, sometimes for centuries. Lathriel's light flickered with exhaustion, and Kratos found himself taking the lead, his presence carving stability into the storm by sheer force of will. The warp resisted at first, then bent slightly, as though curious to see what shape his defiance would take. They reached what could only loosely be described as shelter. a bubble of calmer unreality suspended within the chaos, held in place by ancient sigils and the slow rhythmic chanting of servitor remnants. They were disembodied voices now, fragments of machines whispering litanies to keep the void at bay. Blessed be the circuit that remembers, they repeated over and over, until the words dissolved into static. Lathriel sank into a posture that resembled kneeling. This was once the helm of my vessel, he said. Now it is a thought, preserved by the will of those who refuse to be unmade. His gaze turned toward Kratos. Your arrival has disturbed equilibrium. The storm grows stronger outside. The demons smell a foreign spark. Kratos' eyes narrowed. Let them come. The Mago's laugh was dry, mechanical, and tinged with disbelief. Spoken like an Astartes, it said. Yet you bear no mark of gene seed, no imperial sigil. You are older. Your rage echoes in frequencies I cannot translate. It bends the local reality around us. You must learn to contain it, or the warp will use it to build your tomb. The words carried no fear, only observation. Kratos looked at his hands, at the scars that glowed faintly in the bloodlight. Contain it. That was what he had failed to do in every world he had ever touched. Rage was both his weapon and his curse, the one truth that survived across dimensions. The chamber trembled. Shadows moved beyond the barrier, shapes forming from whispers and regrets. The servitor voices rose in panic, their litanies becoming a desperate staccato. Intrusion event. Pattern mutable. Probability of containment failure increasing. Lathriel extended a hand, its fingers unraveling into filaments of light that etched symbols into the air. They are drawn by you, he said. Emotion is gravity here. They taste what you feel. Kratos turned toward the roiling veil. His expression was unreadable, yet deep within something old stirred. Not fury this time, but pity. He remembered another life. Another son. And for the briefest instant, compassion replaced wrath. The demons hesitated, confused, their forms flickering uncertainly between predator and prey. The Magos gasped. You changed them, but the moment did not last. Compassion was weakness here, and the warp pounced upon it like a beast starved. The entities solidified, becoming monstrosities of iron and faith, their bodies composed of broken reliquaries and bleeding altars. One wore the semblance of a custodian guard, its armor molten gold, its face a void. Another resembled a god from Kratos' past, crowned in chains, laughing with a voice like tearing parchment. He did not hesitate. The blades of chaos roared to life once more, their fire no longer violet but a deep crimson threaded with black. He moved through them with precision rather than fury, every swing deliberate, every impact cutting through the illusions that sought to define him. The demons shattered into shards of unreality, their remains dissolving into sound. When silence returned, Lathriel stood motionless, his light dimmed. They were not merely hunting you, he said. They were studying. You are data to them, a pattern the warp seeks to replicate. Kratos wiped ichor from his blade, though it evaporated before touching the ground. Then let it try. For the first time, the Magos' expression softened into something like admiration. There is a logic to your defiance, he said. Perhaps that is why you endure. Perhaps you are what the machine god dreamed when it tried to imagine freedom. Kratos glanced at him, eyes hard as obsidian. Dreams are for the weak, the Magos smiled faintly. And yet here we are, two dreams that refuse to die. Outside the storm screamed. The barrier that held their fragile sanctuary began to crack, the sigils flickering out one by one. Lathriel's body pulsed with failing energy, the glow retreating into his chest. We must move again, he whispered. There is a current that leads toward the Emperor's light. It may be the only true direction in this place, Kratos nodded. Together, they stepped beyond the sanctuary as it crumbled into nothingness. The warp swallowed their trail, but far behind, something vast awoke, a consciousness older than chaos, watching the path they carved through its domain. The voice that followed them was not demonic nor divine, but the quiet curiosity of a universe meeting its reflection. There came a point where distance lost its meaning. The warp did not permit direction in the way mortals understood it. It folded movement into sensation and called it progress. Kratos followed the machine saint through seas of thought that pulsed like organs, through storms of color that bled sound instead of light. Each step was a negotiation with existence itself, a battle against dissolution. Every breath he took seemed to cost a fraction of his identity. Lathrie's radiance flickered like a dying candle. The code etched across its metallic flesh pulsed irregularly, lines of logic fracturing under the strain of translation. "The structure of this region is collapsing," it said, voice breaking into static. "The warp reshapes itself around your presence. It cannot decide whether you are spirit or matter." Kratos moved without answering. He did not need to understand this realm's madness to endure it. Survival was instinct, and instinct had no patience for reason. Yet he felt it too, the world shifting, trying to mold itself in his image. The ground began to ripple with veins of fire shaped like chains, and the air filled with the scent of ash and blood. The warp had started to mirror his nature, its chaos adopting the form of his past sins. They came upon a plain where the storm broke into fragments of fractured horizon. There shapes gathered, demons but not as before. These war forms familiar and cruel. Ares stood among them, armored in shadow, eyes glowing like twin furnaces. Beside him loomed Athena, her face serene and false. Behind them towered Zeus, his lightning silent but constant. They spoke without words, their thoughts sliding like knives into Kratos' mind. "You cannot slay memory." He tightened his grip on the blades of chaos. "You are not real." The shade of Zeus smiled, that same cruel curve of the mouth that had haunted his every nightmare. "Real enough to bleed you again, son." They advanced and the world fractured with them. The sky fell inward, folding into jagged planes of light. Kratos met their charge head-on. The blades sang through illusions, cutting through gods made of rage and regret. Each impact sent shockwaves that cracked the landscape, scattering spectral feathers and embers. But each time he struck one down, the fragments did not vanish. They crawled back toward him, their shapes dissolving into crimson smoke that seeped beneath his skin. He staggered. The blades flared with ghostly resonance, the chains tightening around his forearms as if possessed. His own memories screamed inside his skull. Faces of those he had slain, father, wife, son, flashed behind his eyes, their voices mingling with the storm's chorus. He tried to force them away, but the warp was clever. It turned remorse into weaponry. Lathrie's voice broke through the noise, faint but insistent. "They are using your essence against you. The warp copies what it touches. You must deny them or become them." Kratos fell to one knee, teeth bared in defiance. His mind trembled beneath the weight of 1,000 whispered accusations. The demons surrounded him, their shapes growing more solid with every heartbeat. Each whisper of guilt gave them substance. Then he stopped fighting. For the first time since entering this nightmare, he ceased to resist the memories. He let them come, every death, every scream, every plea unanswered. They flooded him like molten iron. Pain became clarity. His rage did not fade. It focused. The warp fed on denial, but it had no defense against acceptance. He rose slowly, eyes burning with something older than hate. "You want to feed?" he growled. "Then drown." The blades ignited, their fire pure and blinding. A single swing tore the demonic illusions apart, not through strength but through truth. The figures of his past disintegrated into ash, and the storm recoiled as if struck. Lathriel stumbled back, his mechanical frame humming with disbelief. "You stabilized the field," the Magos murmured. "By accepting the contamination, you reshaped its vector. You imposed your own pattern upon the warp. That should be impossible." Kratos exhaled, his chest heaving. "Impossible," he said, "has never stopped me." Silence settled like dust. The plane that had once mirrored his torment was now still, a barren expanse of black glass stretching to infinity. The air was quiet except for the faint hum of Lathrie's failing circuits. The machine saint approached carefully, scanning the residual energy. "You have changed the rules," it whispered. "The warp remembers what it eats. You have taught it a new truth, that rage can create order." Kratos sheathed his blades, the chains retracting with a metallic sigh. He felt no triumph, only the faint awareness that he had drawn attention. Something vast had felt the shift, something old and watching. Lathriel turned toward the distant void. "Do you feel it?" Kratos nodded once. Eyes. Beyond the horizon, a shimmer of golden light appeared, faint, rhythmic like the pulse of a dying star. It was neither demonic nor natural, it felt human, though ancient beyond measure. Lathriel's remaining eye brightened. "The beacon," it whispered. "The Emperor's will. The Astronomicon itself bleeds through the storm." Kratos stared at the light, his jaw tightening. He could sense something in it that was not unlike himself. a will so powerful it bent reality into obedience. For the first time, the god of war felt the echo of another who had chained divinity to purpose. "Then that is where we go," he said. Lathriel hesitated. To approach that light is to invite annihilation. Even the demons fear its purity. Kratos' gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Good. They began to move once more, the black glass cracking beneath their steps. Behind them, the demonic plane healed itself, whispering his name into the distance. Ahead, the golden pulse grew stronger, and the air began to taste of burnt incense and electricity. As they vanished into the shimmering dark, the warp closed in behind them like a curtain. Far above, unseen, a ripple passed through the immaterium, a tremor felt by demons, psychers, and the dreaming corpse upon the golden throne alike. Something had entered the story of the Imperium that did not belong there, and yet could not be erased. The light drew them onward for what might have been hours or entire lifetimes. Time lost its pulse in the warp, replaced by a rhythm that rose and fell like the breathing of a god. The golden radiance ahead cut through the storm in slow, deliberate waves, each one erasing fragments of unreality. With every step, Kratos felt the chaos recede, reshaping into order, an order built from belief so absolute that it bordered on madness. The machine saint, Lathriel, faltered as they approached. His once steady voice began to fracture, laced with static and reverence. "The Emperor's will," he whispered, his tone more prayer than speech. "I taste the frequency of Terra itself. Impossible, yet it is here." We stand within the echo of his thought. Kratos said nothing. He had walked among gods before, had seen them bleed, scream, and die. Yet this was different. This presence did not roar with power. It pressed with certainty. The air trembled with it. The ground beneath his feet, once formless, now resembled marble veined with molten gold. Statues rose from nothingness as if carved by invisible hands. Warriors in radiant armor, faces shrouded by masks of serenity, each one kneeling toward the unseen source of light. Lathriel moved closer to one of the figures, his metallic fingers brushing its shoulder. "Custodians," he murmured. "Guardians of the throne. But these are only projections, echoes burned into the warp by their faith." Kratos examined the nearest statue. Its armor was etched with intricate sigils, each line alive with faint motion as if the metal itself still breathed. There was reverence here, but also warning. He could feel the faint pulse of something restrained, like the growl of a caged predator. Then the light shifted. It spread outward, filling the horizon, until every shadow dissolved. Kratos shielded his eyes out of instinct. Though the brilliance did not burn as fire did, it revealed. He saw not the warp, but memory cast in gold. A city of impossible scale unfolded around him, towers rising into voidless sky, banners bearing the imperial Aquila streaming in silent wind. The sound of marching feet echoed through eternity. Lathriel fell to his knees, overwhelmed by awe. "Terra," he breathed. Holy Terra as it was before decay. The warp remembers glory as others remember sin. Kratos walked through the illusion, the reflection of a city that had never been his. The faces of mortals moved past him. Soldiers, priests, children, none acknowledging his presence. They were shades of devotion, images preserved by faith. The light that sustained them hummed with psychic power so intense that even Kratos' hardened will strained against it. The golden brilliance pressed upon his mind, not as temptation but as command. "Bow," said a voice that was not a voice. Kratos froze. The sound emanated from everywhere at once, sky, stone, marrow. It was the whisper of a sun addressing dust. Lathriel trembled beside him. "Do not answer," he hissed. "It is only a fragment, a reflection of the master of mankind. Even this echo can unmake what it deems unworthy." But the voice persisted, quieter now, threading directly into Kratos' thoughts. "You are not of my design." He felt the weight of it pressing into his soul, seeking to unmake him through definition. He had known power, but this was something else, divinity weaponized by conviction. For a moment, the god of war stood before an authority that could have matched Olympus itself, and he refused it. "I bow to none," Kratos said. His voice did not echo. It simply existed, unbroken and solid amid the brilliance. The golden light shuddered, not in anger, but in recognition. For an instant, Kratos thought he saw movement within its heart, a throne vast as a mountain, a figure bound to it by cables and faith. Eyes closed, skin like marble, a body both alive and dead. He did not know if what he saw was true or merely what the warp wanted him to see. Lathriel collapsed fully, overwhelmed by radiation that was not light, but holiness made manifest. "He sees you," the Magos whispered. "The Emperor's echo sees everything. You should not stand beneath that gaze." Kratos turned toward the machine saint whose frame was cracking under the psychic strain. "Then it must learn to look away." The voice retreated. The light dimmed to a steady glow, no longer hostile but watchful. The statues of the custodians bowed as if acknowledging something new, an intrusion that could not be catalogued. When the radiance finally settled, Lathriel rose slowly, his servos whining. "You do not understand what you have done," he said. "Even this fragment of the Emperor's will could have erased us both. You resisted it as if it were merely another god." Kratos' eyes were fixed on the fading horizon. "It was." Lathriel's laughter was quiet, disbelieving. "You speak blasphemy with the ease of breathing. I have breathed worse." For a while they walked in silence. The light of the Emperor's echo faded behind them, but something of it clung to Kratos' form, a faint aura that distorted the warp around him, forcing chaos to bend into uneasy calm. The demons that lurked beyond the edges of perception dared not approach. As they continued, Lathriel began to hum faintly, the melody an old binary hymn meant to stabilize his fading consciousness. "You have changed the storm," he said. "Where once the warp consumed, it now waits. It listens." Kratos glanced toward the darkness ahead where the calm ended and chaos waited once more. "Then let it hear." The Magos' head tilted, lenses focusing. "What do you seek, warrior?" Kratos answered without hesitation. "A way out." Lathriel's tone softened. "There is no exit from the warp, only paths that end in understanding or madness. Then I will carve my own." And with that, they stepped beyond the last reach of the golden glow. The silence that followed felt alive, as though the warp itself pondered his defiance. Behind them, the light flickered once more, pulsing like a heart. Somewhere within that distant radiance, on a throne of unimaginable agony, the Emperor might have twitched, or perhaps it was only the universe remembering the echo of a challenge. The golden shadow lingered on Kratos' skin as they disappeared into the storm once more. The golden light dwindled behind them until it was nothing more than a faint pulse within the storm. The farther they traveled, the darker the warp became, not in color but in texture, as though thought itself thickened into rust and dust. Kratos moved through it like a blade through tar, his footsteps echoing with the dull ring of iron upon stone. The air, if it could be called air, tasted metallic, saturated with the ghost of industry long dead. Lathriel's form flickered more erratically now. The once clean lines of his body glitched and distorted, fragments of cogitator code flashing across his chest. "Something calls to me," he murmured, voice breaking into static. A signal of human design. Mechanicus architecture, old beyond reckoning. "We draw near to relics." Kratos said nothing. He could already feel the call, a deep hum beneath his feet resonating through the fabric of unreality. It was a sound that reminded him of hammers and forges, of men trying to make order from chaos. The storm thinned gradually, revealing the shadow of an immense shape adrift in the void. As they approached, the outline sharpened. A derelict void ship, vast as a mountain range, its hull twisted but not broken. It floated upon a sea of psychic dust, its engines silent but still warm with residual energy. The machine saint trembled, overcome by reverence. "The Gloria Mechanis," he whispered. "A Mars-forged vessel, lost during the dark age of technology. I thought her only myth." Kratos looked upon it with quiet suspicion. The vessel resembled a cathedral more than a ship, its spires and domes covered in rusted aquilus and broken statues of robed figures holding gears instead of relics. Massive chains anchored it to fragments of unreal terrain, keeping it from drifting deeper into madness. Every inch of the craft exhaled age. They boarded through a breach in the hull, stepping into corridors choked with floating dust and frozen corpses. The bodies were not corpses as mortals knew them. They had become part of the ship itself. Flesh fused with metal, veins merged with wiring. Eyes glowed faintly, as if the dead still dreamed. Lathriel's voice was low, reverent. This was no ordinary vessel. It was a pilgrimage in motion. The crew sought the Omnissiah's reflection in the warp, to prove that the machine god's logic could survive madness. Kratos ran his hand along the nearest wall. The metal was warm, pulsing faintly like skin. They failed. Perhaps not entirely, Lathriel said, almost to himself. Something endures. I can feel it within the data stream, a rhythm, a chant. And then Kratos heard it too. Faint at first, a distant murmur like the wind through broken pipes, then rising into a chorus of metallic voices. They sang in binary, each tone mechanical yet heavy with emotion. Gloria in Machina, Gloria in Machina. The chant echoed through the corridors, reverberating through metal and bone alike. The deeper they went, the stronger it became. The halls curved and warped, forming labyrinths that defied geometry. Symbols of the Mechanicus covered the walls, glowing faintly with internal fire. Servitors lined the passageways, fused into alcoves, their mouths moving in synchronized prayer. Their bodies were rusted but functional, their eyes blank yet focused on Kratos as he passed. They recognize you, Lathriel whispered, but not as man, as principal. Kratos ignored the stares and pressed onward. The blades of chaos remained sheathed, though the chains hummed softly, resonating with the ship's strange pulse. The farther they walked, the louder the choir became, until the sound filled every atom of space. The chanting ceased to be words and became pure vibration, shaking thought itself. At the center of the ship, they found the source, a throne of gears and cables upon which sat the desiccated remains of a tech priest, its skull encased in glass, its hands fused to a control panel of unknown design. Thousands of wires extended from its spine, connecting to every part of the ship. Its mouth was open, still singing the endless hymn. Lathriel knelt. Archmagos Virilan, he said, the visionary who sought to bind divinity to circuit. He has become one with his creation. Kratos stared at the figure. It was neither living nor dead. Its essence still flowed through the machine, keeping the entire structure suspended in a fragile loop of persistence. The ship lived because it refused to admit death. And then the Archmagos spoke. Its voice did not come from its body, but from the walls. The ceiling, the floor, a symphony of sound rendered from machinery and memory. Who disturbs the eternal chant? It asked. Lathriel bowed deeply. Magos Lathriel, survivor of the omniscient path. I bring with me an anomaly, a being the warp cannot unmake. Kratos' name rippled through the ship like a signal. The choir faltered, voices momentarily breaking from unity. The Archmagos' skull tilted toward him, gears grinding slowly. Impossible construct. Undefined parameters. You bear resonance without source. Kratos' tone was flat. I seek passage. Passage is granted to those who believe, the ship replied. Do you believe in the machine god? I believe in nothing. Silence. Then from deep within the ship's mechanisms, laughter, harsh, metallic, genuine. Then you are truth made flesh. The Omnicia dreamed of perfection without faith. Perhaps you are the dream. The chamber trembled as the machinery around them came alive, energy pulsing through conduits long dead. Take what remains of my knowledge, said the Archmagus. The path ahead lies through the storm beyond light, the boundary of the Astronomicon. There you will find what even gods cannot touch. Lathriel's form began to flicker violently, his data essence overwhelmed by the transmission. He's giving me everything, he gasped. Schematics, hymns, memories, the entire memory of a dying world. Kratos turned toward the throne one last time. Your chant ends here. No, said the Archmagos, its voice fading into static. It only changes key. The lights dimmed. The hymn slowed, breaking into scattered echoes. When the sound finally died, the ship sighed like a body releasing its last breath. The choir of rust was silent. Kratos and Lathriel stood in the quiet aftermath, surrounded by relics of impossible devotion. Do you grieve for them? Kratos asked. Lathriel's voice was soft. Machines do not grieve, but I remember. They left the ship the way they had entered, stepping back into the warp's endless dark. Behind them, the Gloria Mechanis crumbled into dust, its purpose fulfilled, its prayer finally complete. Ahead, the golden shimmer of the Astronomicon flickered faintly, waiting like a promise. The machine saint glanced toward his companion. The storm grows stronger. Whatever lies ahead will test even you. Kratos' expression did not change. Then it will break. And together they walked into the rising storm. The warp had changed. It no longer roiled with blind malice or whispered lies in familiar voices. It had become still, terribly unnaturally still. The silence was absolute, so deep that even Lathriel's mechanical hum seemed an intrusion. Kratos felt the stillness before he understood it. a vast consciousness pressing against the limits of perception, not as a presence but as an awareness too large to name. They walked upon nothing and everything. The darkness was infinite, yet it shimmered faintly as though light tried to escape it. Each step Kratos took disturbed invisible ripples, and in those ripples he saw fragments of faces, some human, others monstrous, all turning toward him as if expecting recognition. Souls, millions upon millions of them, drifting together in quiet agony. The Astronomican's fringe, Lathriel whispered, awe filtering through the distortion of his vox, where the Emperor's light collides with the warp's infinite hunger. Every soul that dies in his name passes near this threshold. His words fractured into static. We stand within memory itself. Kratos gazed upon the spectral forms drifting through the void. They shimmered faintly, each a ghost of devotion, belief, or pain. Some prayed without sound. Others screamed without air. He did not flinch at their suffering. He merely acknowledged it as he would a river's current. They are lost. No, said Lathriel. They are found in a way that defies logic. Each spirit drawn here sustains the light of the Astronomican. They burn eternally so that others may see. Kratos' eyes narrowed. Sacrifice without end. The machine saint hesitated. Faith requires it. Faith always does. They pressed onward, deeper into the void where the souls thickened into oceans. The warp's colors returned in faint pulses, blues like starfire, reds like fresh blood, golds like dying suns. Kratos could feel the resonance of the Emperor's power through them, a pulse that beat across eternity. It reminded him of Olympus before its fall, a tyranny so radiant it believed itself benevolent. Lathriel paused as if hearing something distant. His head turned toward a region of deeper shadow. Something watches, he said. Not demon, not god. Something older. Kratos drew the blades of chaos. The chains rattled softly, the steel glowing with muted fire that cast no reflection. Then let it look closer. From the dark came a whisper like wind across old bones. It formed words only when Kratos' mind imposed meaning upon them. You do not belong here, god of another war. The voice was not singular. It was legion. The chorus of uncounted souls speaking as one. Kratos stood unmoving. I do not belong anywhere. The sea of souls stirred. Faces began to coalesce. Some human, others warped by centuries of torment. They gathered before him, forming a shape, a vague imitation of flesh woven from light and memory. Its eyes burned with the pale gold of devotion twisted to madness. Lathriel took a trembling step backward. An echo of the Astronomican, he said. A collective manifestation of every soul bound to its beacon. The Emperor's choir. The apparition tilted its head. You walk the path of the condemned and yet remain unburned. You bear no faith, no tether. You are not of the materium nor the immaterium. Why does the light not consume you? Kratos lowered his blade slightly, not in submission but in understanding. Because I do not seek to be consumed. The choir rippled, its countless faces shifting in silent thought. Faith defines existence here. Without it you should be nothing. I have been nothing before, Kratos said, and I survived that too. For a moment the silence returned, heavy, uncertain. Then the choir spoke again, its voice now softened, almost mournful. You carry the scent of gods long dead. Their ashes cling to you like memory. The warp hungers for such things. The ground, or what passed for it, shook violently. The sea of souls convulsed, folding inward, and from its depths rose a figure vast as a titan, its body formed entirely from the luminous dead. Wings of spectral fire unfurled from its back, and in its hands it held a spear of light. Lathriel screamed binary warnings, his voice breaking into mechanical panic. Manifestation density exceeding containment. It's becoming real. Kratos stood unmoved, eyes locked on the creature. Then it can be killed. The choir struck first. The spear descended like the wrath of stars, shattering the illusion of stillness. Kratos moved faster than sound, the blades of chaos igniting in bursts of crimson fire. The impact sent ripples of psychic energy through the void, tearing fragments of reality apart. Souls screamed and scattered as Kratos met divinity with defiance. Every strike he delivered burned through spectral flesh that reformed instantly. Each wound he took dissolved before it could matter. The fight was endless, cyclical, unreal. For every fragment he destroyed, 10 more rose to replace it. Lathriel tried to intervene, channeling energy from his internal reactors, reciting binary hymns meant to stabilize the space around them. His voice echoed through the storm. By the machine, God's logic, I impose form upon the void. For a heartbeat, the creature faltered, its shape flickering. Kratos seized the opening. He drove both blades through the being's chest, pulling it close until their foreheads nearly touched. You are not the first false god I have unmade, he whispered. The choir screamed, not in pain but in release. Its form unraveled into motes of light, scattering like ashes into the darkness. The sea of souls quieted. The silence that followed was not void, but peace. Lathriel collapsed, his frame overloaded with data from the encounter. Sparks leapt from his armor as he tried to stand. You destroyed an echo of 10,000 saints. The warp will remember that. Kratos looked into the distance where the golden shimmer of the Astronomicon pulsed faintly once more. Let it remember. The silence that followed was neither victory nor calm. It was anticipation. The storm ahead began to twist again, but this time the current flowed toward them. Something immense was shifting in response to his defiance. Lathriel managed to rise, his mechanical eye lenses refocusing. You have drawn attention, he said. Not from demons, not from the Emperor's light. From something deeper, the heart of the warp itself. Kratos turned his gaze forward. Then that is where we go. The machine saint hesitated, but followed. As they stepped into the next horizon, the souls parted silently, as if recognizing something beyond faith, an inevitability that even the warp itself could not deny. And far behind them, the fading echo of the choir whispered one last phrase into the dark. The storm bends for him who refuses to kneel. The silence that followed was alive. It pressed upon Kratos and Lathriel like a vast and watchful mind, heavy with expectation. The warp around them no longer pulsed with chaos but with rhythm. A deep, measured cadence like the heartbeat of some buried colossus. The light of the Astronomicon loomed above, faint but constant. Its radiance filtered through layers of dream and distortion. Below it, the void itself seemed to fold inward, creating a vast depression of psychic gravity. Kratos descended first. The path formed beneath his feet as though the universe itself acknowledged his intention. Each step left behind faint ripples of golden ash shimmering and then fading into the dark. Lathriel followed, his mechanical limbs creaking beneath unseen pressure. We tread where no mortal soul was meant to go, he murmured. This is not the warp as men understand it. We are entering its marrow. The air thickened, heavy with the taste of ozone and iron. Kratos could hear whispers in languages older than stars, voices speaking in slow, ponderous rhythm. The sound grew louder the deeper they went, until it became clear that it was not whispering at all. It was chanting. A single phrase, repeated endlessly by countless unseen throats thrown beneath the sea. Thrown beneath the sea. They reached a plane of mirrored black glass that stretched infinitely in all directions. Beneath its surface, Kratos saw shapes moving, massive silhouettes writhing in slow, dreamlike motion. This is no ocean, Lathriel said softly. It is the subconscious of the warp itself. Every emotion, every prayer ever uttered to a god, human or otherwise, flows through here. Kratos stared into the depths, where a faint golden glow pulsed like a distant heart. He did not ask what it was. He already knew. The glass cracked under his weight, thin fissures spreading outward like veins. From the cracks rose faint tendrils of light, brushing against his skin. Each one carried sensation, fear, devotion, despair. Emotions so pure, they seared the mind. For an instant, Kratos saw flashes of lives not his own. Soldiers dying in trenches beneath alien suns, mothers screaming for lost children, priests offering their last breath in worship of an unseen god. Every death fed the light. Lathriel reached out, his servo hand trembling. This is the Emperor's reservoir. The Astronomicon does not draw power from the Emperor alone. It draws from the totality of human faith. Every spark of belief is gathered here, refined through suffering. Kratos' voice was low, steady. Faith forged from pain. Pain sanctified into light, Lathriel corrected, though the words lacked conviction. The cracks widened. The light beneath the glass intensified until it was blinding. Kratos stepped back, his instincts tightening into readiness. The chanting deepened, no longer distant but all around them, vibrating through the air. The surface shattered. From the broken sea rose a throne of impossible scale, carved from living gold and molten thought. Its surface was engraved with runes that shifted between languages, some imperial, some alien, some older than either. The light it emitted was neither holy nor profane. It was both and neither. Upon it sat no figure, only a shadow molded in the shape of one, a phantom of the Emperor's form, faceless and vast, its body composed entirely of burning souls. Lathriel fell to his knees immediately. Omnissiah, protect me. The throne itself has manifested. His voice cracked with static. We are standing before the echo of the Emperor's consciousness within the warp. Kratos stared at the empty shadow upon the throne. A god's ghost. The shadow's head tilted slightly as though acknowledging him. When it spoke, its voice was not a sound but an idea pressed directly into their minds. You carry defiance into sanctity, stranger. You have torn a hole through my domain and dared to walk unburned. Kratos' eyes narrowed. I have walked through worse gods than you. The shadow's light flared, and for an instant, Kratos saw visions layered atop reality. Armies kneeling across worlds, ships burning in holy fire, entire civilizations chanting the Emperor's name. The scale of devotion was suffocating. I am not a god, the voice said. I am the sum of mankind's will to survive. Then mankind worships its own fear, Kratos said. The throne shook, its brilliance dimming momentarily. You speak truth as weapon, but truth alone cannot sustain eternity. Eternity never sustains itself, Kratos replied. It feeds. The silence that followed was not empty, but contemplative. Then the light pulsed again, softer this time. What are you, who denies gods yet bears their mark? You are no demon, no man, no machine. I am vengeance, Kratos said simply. The light quivered as though uncertain. Vengeance has no place here. Only will. Then I will. For the first time, the throne's light faltered, not from anger, but from recognition. The figure on the throne leaned forward slightly, its faceless visage aligning with his. For a fleeting moment, Kratos saw something within it. A reflection not of a god, but of himself, seated upon a throne of his own making, his chains coiled like serpents around the bones of Olympus. The shadow spoke again, quieter now. There is a place for you within the storm. The warp accepts strength even without faith. Stay, and it will reshape itself in your image. Kratos turned away. I do not seek a throne. The warp trembled. The voice shifted, tinged with something almost human. Then you will face what lies beyond thrones, the heart of the storm itself. Lathriel rose, trembling, his optics flaring with panic. He warns you, the center of the warp is not a place. It is sentience unbound. Even the chaos gods fear it. Kratos sheathed his blades, his expression unreadable. Then they will learn to fear more. As he stepped away, the throne began to dissolve back into the glass sea. The golden light dimmed, leaving behind only the echo of the chant, slower now, as though fading into sleep. Lathriel followed, glancing back one last time. You denied the echo of a god and lived. Few things in this universe can claim the same. Kratos did not answer. Ahead, the darkness swirled into a vortex of colorless energy, a maelstrom that neither light nor shadow could define. It called to him without voice, the way the blade once called for blood. He stepped toward it without hesitation. Behind them, the sea of glass repaired itself and the chant resumed in faint whispers. The vortex awaited like an open wound in the fabric of eternity. Its light was neither golden nor crimson, but something beyond both, a constant inversion. Reality folding in upon itself, tearing open new truths as it devoured old ones. Kratos felt the pull immediately, not as gravity but as invitation. The air shuddered around him, filled with the pressure of infinite voices that spoke as one. Their words were not words, but impulses, promises, temptations, threats, woven into the rhythm of the warp's pulse. Lathriel lagged behind, his metallic limbs faltering with each step. "The maelstrom," he gasped, his vox stuttering through interference. "The cradle of gods. Where thought births form and form devours itself. Even the ruinous powers dare not look too long into its heart." Kratos did not slow, and yet they exist because of it. "Yes," Lathriel said, "they are its children and its prisoners." The vortex deepened as they approached, its edge shimmering with images, visions drawn from memory, from desire, from pain. Kratos saw Olympus aflame, the shattered body of Zeus tumbling through smoke. He saw himself standing over it, breathing hard, the chains still burning around his wrists. Then the vision shifted, and the dead god's face changed. Not Zeus now, but another throne-bound figure with hollow eyes and a radiant crown. Lathriel reached for his arm. "Do not look too long. The warp offers what you wish to see, and what you fear." "I fear nothing," Kratos said. "That is why it wants you." They crossed the boundary. The world folded. For an instant, Kratos' mind fractured under the strain. He saw endless wars fought across millennia, worlds burning in the name of countless gods. He saw the chaos powers, Khorne's rage, Nurgle's rot, Tzeentch's deceit, Slanesh's hunger, all circling this singular core like wolves around a dying star. Yet within the center of it all, untouched, there was stillness, a shape not yet defined, waiting for something to name it. They emerged upon a vast plain of bone and ash, lit by lightning that struck in silence. Towers rose in the distance, each carved from the skulls of titans, their crowns fused into grotesque monuments. Rivers of molten memory flowed between them, carrying the debris of 1,000 worlds. "This place," Lathriel's voice cracked, "it is made of thought that has outlived its creator." Kratos walked toward the nearest tower. Then thought dies here too. As he approached, the structure trembled. From its surface, figures began to emerge, shadows coalescing into form. At first, they looked like men, soldiers, priests, and kings, each wearing crowns of iron or bone. But their faces were wrong, stretched, hollow, and flickering with psychic fire. They bowed as one, their movements jerky, unnatural. "Witness the maelstrom of crowns," said a voice from everywhere and nowhere, "where every god that ever was and ever will be is born from the will to rule." The crowned figures lifted their heads. Beneath their hollow visages burned symbols of every power: the 8-pointed star, the twin-headed eagle, the shifting rune of change, the droplet of rot. "All kings, all tyrants, all the same," Lathriel stumbled backward. "These are echoes of divine will, shards of ambition too great to die. They gather here until belief remakes them." Kratos drew the blades of chaos. "Then I will unmake them first." The crowned phantoms surged forward, their motions fluid yet unnatural, voices rising in a deafening chant: "Crown or die, bow or burn." Their blades, forged from light and hatred, crashed against Kratos' chains. Sparks of unreality burst outward with every strike. The battle was not fought in space but in thought. Each enemy he cut down dissolved into memory, reforming behind him. For every phantom slain, another took its place, crowned anew. They whispered in 1,000 voices, of thrones waiting for him, of power freely given, of vengeance made eternal. Kratos answered them with silence. His fury was not the roaring rage of a beast, but a cold, precise resolve. The chains became extensions of his will, carving through illusions and gods alike. Each motion stripped another layer of meaning from the warp's lies. Lathriel fell to his knees amid the storm, his frame shaking under the psychic pressure. "They cannot die," he cried. "They are archetypes, manifestations of dominance itself." Kratos lifted one phantom by the throat, its crown burning against his palm. "Everything dies," he crushed it, the crown shattered. A ripple of light burst outward, slicing through the air like a blade. One by one, the other crowned figures froze, their forms cracking like glass. The plane trembled. The towers of skulls began to collapse, each impact echoing like thunder through eternity. The voice returned, strained now. You would unmake thrones, god of war? You would deny all crowns, even your own? Kratos stood among the ruin, the chains dripping with golden fire. I have worn crowns made of blood and ash. They weigh the same. The silence that followed was the closest thing to respect the warp could give. The crowns that had not yet fallen melted into molten gold, forming a path ahead, leading deeper into the heart of the maelstrom. Lathriel rose unsteadily, his lenses flickering. The warp bends to you. It does not understand you, and so it yields. Kratos looked into the distance where the gold path vanished into nothing. It yields only until it learns. And when it learns? Lathriel asked. Then I will teach it again. The storm began to close around them once more, a spiral of light and darkness merging into one. They walked on, leaving behind the ruin of every crown that had ever been forged in thought or faith. And as they vanished into the swirling horizon, a whisper followed them from the crumbling plain, a tone not of anger, but of admiration. The god who would not rule walks toward the heart of all gods. The storm swallowed them whole. There was no direction here, no sense of above or below. The warp had shed even its illusions, revealing its true form, a living consciousness that breathed through every molecule of unreality. Colors bled into one another, then into none at all, until the world became pure motion. Kratos and Lathriel moved through it as ghosts through a dream. Each step seemed to echo in eternity, reverberating through dimensions that had no names. Lathriel's body faltered first. His mechanical limbs sparked and spasmed, his voice reduced to bursts of static and stuttering binary. We are at the conceptual center, he managed. No flesh or logic was meant to stand here. Reality bends to will alone. Kratos stood silent, unyielding. He could feel the truth of it. The warp was no place but a mind, an infinite ocean of thought and emotion. Every heartbeat he took sent ripples across it, and in those ripples he could hear laughter, weeping, and the thunderous echo of war. The warp was all things that mortals feared, loved and dreamed, and within that storm, something vast was watching. It made itself known not by sound but by presence, a weight pressing against every atom of his being. Kratos had felt gods before. He had slain them, defied them, and outlived their curses. But this was different. This was the echo of all gods at once. The voice that came was neither male nor female, neither singular nor plural. It was the voice of the warp itself. You do not belong here, broken god. Kratos met the storm's voice with silence. You have walked through my children's domains, it continued. You have slain fragments of their thought, denied their thrones, unmade their illusions. Yet you do not seek dominion. Why come to my heart if not to rule? To end it, Kratos said. The storm shuddered, rippling outward in laughter that could have destroyed galaxies. End me? I am not a being. I am hunger given form, dream given shape. I am the breath between prayers, the silence between screams. You cannot kill what births gods. Kratos stepped forward, his chains dragging sparks across nothing. Then I will kill what they make of you. The warp shifted. From its depths rose figures, thousands upon thousands, each one wearing a face Kratos recognized. Zeus, Ares, Athena, Baldur, Odin, and now others, the Emperor, Horus, Lorgar, Sanguinius. Gods and demigods, saints and monsters, all cast in the light of the warp's will. They surrounded him in a vast circle, their eyes burning with divine fire. Every god is born here, said the voice, and every god returns. Look upon them. You are one of them. I am nothing like them. You are exactly them, it replied, a being forged from purpose until purpose became your name. You are vengeance without peace, defiance without home. That is what a god is. The faces began to move. They spoke his name in unison, 1,000 voices overlapping, whispering and roaring. Kratos, Kratos, Kratos. Lathriel fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the psychic weight. His optical lenses cracked, leaking faint streams of light. They are reflections, he cried. The warp mirrors your essence. It is trying to claim you. Kratos looked around him, his expression unchanging. It will fail. The ghosts struck first. They came as a storm of blades and light. Every memory of war he had ever fought reimagined against him. Ares' flaming sword clashed against his chains. Zeus's lightning burned his flesh. The Emperor's golden blade sang through the void, cutting the air itself. But Kratos fought not with fury, but with focus. His movements were clean, precise, without hesitation. Every strike he delivered cut through the illusion, severing gods from their meaning. The warp screamed as its shapes dissolved, their power unraveling into formless energy. The storm retaliated. "You cannot destroy what you are." "I am not what you make of me," Kratos growled, driving both blades into the unseen center of the voice. The air detonated with silent fury. A pulse spread outward, cracking the fabric of the warp. The colors drained away, leaving behind pure white emptiness. In that stillness, a single figure appeared, a woman of light and shadow, her face shifting constantly between thousands of forms. Sometimes she wore the visage of Athena, then of the Emperor, then of something ancient and featureless. "You cannot kill me, god of war," she said, "but you can choose what I become." Kratos hesitated, the blades humming in his hands. "Choice is a lie where gods exist." "Then end it," she whispered. "Unmake choice. Unmake us all." He could feel it, the temptation, the release of final destruction. To strike now would erase the warp entirely, unbind every demon, extinguish every god. It would silence the cosmos. He raised his blades. Lathriel's voice cut through the silence, small and broken. "Kratos, and if you end it, humanity ends with it. Every soul is bound here, every thought. You would erase all meaning, not just madness." Kratos froze. The chains trembled. He looked at the woman of light, the embodiment of the warp of gods, of faith, and saw not divinity but reflection. She was the same as he once was, born from pain, sustained by defiance. To destroy her would be to destroy what made life struggle against the dark. Slowly, he lowered his blades. The light's expression softened. "Then you understand. Even gods must endure what they despise." "I understand nothing endures forever," Kratos said, turning away. "Not even gods," the warp sighed. The figure dissolved, her form scattering into radiant dust. The whiteness deepened, folding in on itself until it became a horizon once more, a thin line of light where reality began again. Lathriel crawled closer, his voice weak but steady. "You denied the heart of the warp, it will never forget you." Kratos looked toward the horizon. "Then let it remember." The chains quieted. The storm receded. For the first time there was silence, not peace, but possibility. Behind them, the shattered gods whispered as they faded back into nothingness. "The god who would not be god has wounded eternity." Kratos walked toward the light. The light at the horizon grew until it swallowed all else. Kratos stepped through it and found himself standing in silence once again, though this time the air was heavy with sanctity instead of chaos. The ground beneath his boots was polished marble veined with gold. Pillars rose high above him, carved with runes of devotion and sacrifice. At the center of this vast cathedral sat a throne, not forged by mortal hands but grown from metal and memory, its surface alive with the pulse of unseen machinery. The air thrummed with power. Kratos knew instinctively that he stood upon Terra, or rather a reflection of it. The throne room of the master of mankind stretched before him, but it was too perfect, too vast, too empty. It was not the real thing. It was the idea of it, the echo that existed within the warp, the sanctum of humanity's belief. Lathriel followed behind, his joints creaking from strain. "We are inside his shadow," he said quietly. "The warp's reflection of the Emperor's presence. No mortal or machine has ever walked this far." Kratos looked to the throne. A golden figure sat upon it motionless. For a moment he thought it was another illusion, but then the figure's eyes flickered open. Twin suns burned in the darkness, casting their light across the marble hall. "You have come far, son of another age," the Emperor's voice said, not through sound, but through thought. It filled every corner of Kratos' mind, neither welcoming nor condemning. "You have walked the paths of the dead and faced what even I could not destroy. Tell me, why have you entered the fire from which even gods recoil?" Kratos stood before the throne, the blades of chaos hanging silent at his sides. "I came seeking an end." "To what?" "To everything that binds the living to gods." The Emperor's expression did not change, but something in the air shifted, a tightening of unseen gravity. "You speak as one who has known too many thrones, yet you understand little of what this one demands. The golden throne is not power, it is sacrifice. It consumes the man to preserve the species." "I have made my share of sacrifices," Kratos replied, his voice low, "and found no salvation in them." "Then you have not sacrificed enough." The word struck deeper than he expected. Kratos looked upon the Emperor, not as ruler or deity, but as a man locked forever within his own creation. The veins of light that ran through the throne pulsed like arteries. The cables that bound his body resembled serpents of fire, coiling tighter with each breath. Here was not divinity, but imprisonment dressed in glory. Lathriel approached, kneeling beside the steps. "Lord of mankind," he whispered through static, "this being is not of our realm. He carries no gene trace, no psychic signature known to any archive. Yet the warp itself recoils from him." The Emperor's gaze did not waver, because he carries his own curse. The gods he slew were not forgotten by the Immaterium. They left their echo in him. He is a wound that the warp cannot close. Kratos felt the weight of those words settle into his bones. He had thought himself beyond curse and prophecy, yet now the truth was laid bare. Every god he had killed had left something behind, a memory of defiance etched into his soul. The Emperor rose from the throne. Light spilled from his form, but beneath it Kratos could sense exhaustion, an age beyond reckoning. "You sought the heart of the warp," the Emperor said, "and found what even I cannot destroy. Now you stand at the threshold of creation's greatest lie, that gods are eternal. Tell me, Kratos, if you could end all of it, would you?" Kratos met his gaze. "I would end what must end. Nothing more. And who decides what must? The one who bears the weight of it." The Emperor's expression softened, not in kindness but in recognition. "Then you are more like me than you wish to believe." For a moment neither spoke. The vast hall trembled with unseen energy, the hum of the throne growing louder, almost desperate. Then the Emperor lifted one golden hand and pointed toward the ceiling, where the faint outline of a vast sun glimmered beyond the marble dome. "The Astronomicon," he said. "My beacon, my prison. It burns so that humanity may find its way through the dark. But its flame dims. I have held the warp at bay for 10,000 years, yet I feel it now, slipping through the cracks, whispering through the veil. You have wounded it. The maelstrom trembles because of you." Kratos' eyes narrowed. "Then end it." "I cannot. My death would shatter the light that guides mankind. The Imperium would drown in the warp's tides." "But you—" The Emperor's gaze sharpened. "You are not bound to this reality. You have already undone the rules that govern it. If you stay, the warp will fracture around you. The gods will weaken, but so too will every soul that depends upon them." Lathriel looked between them, static flickering in his voice. "If he stays, billions will die in silence. If he leaves, the warp remains unhealed. There is no victory here." Kratos stepped forward, his shadow crossing the first stair of the throne. "There never is." The Emperor regarded him in silence. Then slowly he extended his hand, not as a ruler offering power, but as one warrior acknowledging another. "Then go, Kratos of another age. Return to the world of flesh if you still can. The warp will remember your defiance, and so will I." Kratos did not take the hand. Instead, he turned away, his voice a low murmur. "Then remember this. Gods who live by sacrifice always demand more than they give." The Emperor said nothing as the golden light began to dim. The marble hall faded into shadow, and the sound of machinery returned, the low, endless hum of the throne devouring its master. Kratos and Lathriel stood upon the threshold once more, the edge between reality and unreality thinning like paper. Behind them, the Emperor's voice came one last time, distant, almost human. "May you never find peace, for peace is the death of purpose." Kratos did not answer. He stepped through the veil, and the light of the warp folded in upon itself. Terra vanished, only silence remained. There was no light when he awoke. Only the faint hiss of air and the slow rhythm of his breathing, steady and heavy as the pulse of a dying star. The chains hung quiet against his wrists. When he opened his eyes, the world was gray, a ruin of what had once been the surface of a world alive with machinery and prayer. The sky above was shrouded in dust, broken by the silhouette of orbital wreckage falling in slow, graceful arcs. Kratos pushed himself upright. The ground beneath him was cracked basalt, littered with the remnants of banners bearing the imperial Aquila. Their fabric was blackened by fire. Towers lay split in two, and the distant mountains burned with faint, ember-like glows. There was no sound of battle, no screams, no hymns, only the hum of a world left without purpose. Lathriel's body lay nearby, half buried in ash. His lenses were shattered, his vox grill dark. Kratos knelt beside him, brushing the dust from his face. The metal was cold, You spoke too much, Kratos murmured. A flicker of light sparked deep within the construct's chest. His voice came weak, distorted. We made it back, or something that resembles back. What world is this? Lathriel's optics flickered again, his tone uncertain. I do not know. The stars have shifted. The Astronomicon is gone. The warp is quiet. Too quiet. Kratos looked toward the horizon. The silence was unnatural. It was not peace, it was the absence of everything that had once been. No demons shrieking through the veil. No psychic hum of faith. Even the whispers of gods were gone. He realized then what he had done. The wound he had carved into the heart of the warp had not destroyed it. It had silenced it. The gods still existed, perhaps, but they were trapped in the stillness of their own making. For the first time in eons, the immaterium was mute. Lathriel struggled to sit upright. The Emperor's light no longer reaches the void. The Imperium will be blind, lost. Worlds will drift without guidance. Then they will learn to see without gods, Kratos said. You speak of freedom, Lathriel replied, but freedom without faith is madness to men. The warp gave them meaning even when it destroyed them. Kratos rose, the ash swirling around his feet. Then let them build their own. They began to walk. The landscape stretched endlessly before them. Cities frozen in half-collapse, rivers turned to dust, statues of saints leaning against the wind. Yet for all the ruin, there was something new in the air. The faint hum of quiet life. Not the roar of battle or the hymn of devotion, but the fragile, steady persistence of survival. A group of figures appeared on the horizon, moving slowly through the haze. Humans, thin, scarred, their armor mismatched and ancient. They carried no banners, no symbols of allegiance. When they saw Kratos and Lathriel, they froze. One of them stepped forward, a young woman with soot-blackened skin and eyes too old for her face. You came from the storm, she said. Her voice was rough, but not afraid. Did you see the light die? Kratos nodded once. It did not die. It fell silent. The woman exchanged glances with her companions. Then the prophets were wrong, she murmured. They said the end would come with fire. There is always fire, Kratos said. What matters is what remains after. They led him through what was left of their settlement, a hollowed manufactorum repurposed into shelter. Children slept between rusted engines. Old men tended to fires burning in broken oil drums. There were no preachers, no servitors, no banners of devotion. Only the living, stripped of gods and empire alike. One of them offered Kratos a bowl of water, and he drank. The taste was bitter with metal and ash, yet it steadied him. The woman watched him with quiet curiosity. You speak like the stories, she said. The old myths, the ones they burned. The man who killed gods. Kratos said nothing. Is it true? She pressed. Did you kill them? He looked into the firelight, the memories flickering there like ghosts. They killed themselves. I was only the hand that finished it. The woman lowered her gaze, as if ashamed to ask what she wanted most. Will they come back? Kratos stood looking toward the horizon where the storm once was. Not soon. He paused, then added, Perhaps that is mercy. As night fell, if such a thing still existed, the stars returned. Faint, hesitant, as though uncertain they were permitted to shine without the Emperor's gaze. Kratos sat alone on the ridge above the camp, watching them blink into life. The chains on his wrists lay quiet, the metal cooled to gray. For the first time since his arrival, he felt the strange weight of stillness, not peace, not rest, but something close. Lathriel's voice came faintly from below. What will you do now, god of another world? Kratos did not answer immediately. The wind carried the smell of dust and smoke, but beneath it, he could almost taste the promise of new air, the kind born not of conquest, but of rebuilding. I will walk, he said finally, until the silence learns to speak again. He looked once more to the heavens where a faint shimmer of light traced the void, perhaps a remnant of the Astronomicon, perhaps something new entirely. It flickered, uncertain but alive, and for the first time in 10,000 years the galaxy did not bow to gods or empires. It simply existed, broken, quiet, free. Kratos turned away from the horizon, his shadow long against the ash. The chains clinked once softly, like the last echo of a song that no longer needed to be sung. And in the vast silence that followed, somewhere deep within the wound of the universe, the warp stirred, not in rage or hunger but in remembrance.